Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Women. On this show, you will learn how to create wealth through real estate the blissful way. That means with very little stress and very little time. We talk about strategies, mindset, heart set, money smarts, resources, and so much more to ensure you're able to create the success you most deeply desire. Now, here's your host, Monica Sawyer.
Today, I am delighted to welcome back to the show, Chris Miles. Chris Miles, the cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor, I love that, by the way, is a leading authority teaching entrepreneurs and professionals how to get their money working for them today. He's an author, podcast host of the Chris Miles Money Show, which I've been on, has been featured in U.S. News, CNN Money, Entrepreneurs on Fire, Bigger Pockets, and has a proven reputation with his company, Money Ripples, getting his clients fast financial results. In fact, his personal clients have increased their cash flow to almost $3 million in the last 12 years. Wow, those numbers are incredible. Hi there, Chris.
300 million.
300 million. Did I say three?
Uh-huh.
Oh dear, no, 300. There's two more zeros there.
3 million this month.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, thank you for that correction. That's amazing. I'm so excited to have you chatting with our ladies again today. How have you been?
I've been great. I really appreciate being back on, Monica.
Yeah. Yay. So Chris, could you give us a 2-minute high level story about sort of how you got into what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, funny enough, it wasn't planned. Like a lot of things in life, right? Life just kind of takes you the course it needs to take you. And, I was planning to become a business consultant, but I figured if I'm going to do that, I should have real life business experience. So I figured I'm going to drop out of college, just take a 1-year sabbatical and go find some business, some side hustle I can do. And so I was looking around, and the first opportunity that came up that kind of zinged a little bit was becoming a financial advisor. Now, granted, I had no financial experience. I mean, I took a few like little high school accounting and banking classes. I knew how to write a check, but and balance a check register back when we used to use check registers. But that was it. Yeah. I mean, my dad only just taught me to save. That's all he taught me to do. While my mom was an artist, she was trained by the same master painter that trained Bob Ross. Right. Mm-hmm. So she had this entrepreneur thing, but it was kind of easy come, easy go with money, while my dad was just save it and hoard it. So I really didn't know anything. And I did that. I actually was a financial advisor. I dropped out of college. I never went back, never finished my bachelor's. I was one class away from finishing.
Oh dear. Okay.
And I ended up staying as an entrepreneur. I stayed as a financial advisor, did that for a number of years. And then after a while, I'm one of those people, I like evidence. I like to know that things work. And I started to realize that even as I inherited clients from previous financial advisors, they weren't financially free. They were still struggling just like every other American, right? So I had to ask myself, I'm like, well, is this really working? But of course, when your pocketbook's tied to it, you kind of want to turn a blind eye to some of those things, right? Well, of course, it took my friend Doug. It was just like yesterday. I remember my friend Doug, we're talking to each other, and he's saying how he and his dad partner on some real estate deals, and he's doubled his dad's income as a professor at the local university. And I thought, come on, that's too good to be true. No way you could do that in just a matter of months. And he said, no, we're doing it. And finally, after we got in this little debate, because I didn't believe him, he finally just said, Chris, let me ask you a question. How many of your clients are financially free, like really free, where they don't worry about money? I said, well, none, because even the retired ones still worry about money. He said, well, great job, Chris. I didn't expect it to be that bad, but okay, good job.
So, and I just want to point that out, what you just said.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt for just a minute, but
yeah.
Even when we retire, many of us worry about money, right?
Yeah.
And it's so we've got our number and we go for that number, but the number is based on assumptions that we've made when we don't really know what retirement is going to be like. So I love that you're able to actually acknowledge that, yes, they were able to retire, but they didn't feel financially free. There's a difference, right? Financially free gives you true time freedom. Right. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to retire. You might still be working. You might be working on a passion project, whatever, but you don't worry about money. It's money freedom time freedom. I like to say passion freedom, right? So
Mhm.
I love that you pointed that out. Thank you for that. And then keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a good point because like I was thinking of like the retired doctor, the physician, she may or may not have had enough money to really last her lifetime, right? And that's the fear. Most of them
Mhm,
don't know if their money will last because you're only told to pull out as of now, only supposed to pull out maybe 3% of your money per
mhm,
year. So
mhm.
if you have $1 million, you're only supposed to pull out 30,000 a year. That's
What kind of
nothing. That's
lifestyle is that?
poverty.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. You're a broke millionaire, right?
That's right.
Uh, so I realized I'm like, and so that's part of it. It is numbers game, but even more so, like you're kind of alluding to, it's an emotions game too. It's a mindset game, and
Mhm,
so you could actually have all the money in the world, but you might not feel like it's enough because you're in this scarcity mentality. And
mhm,
that would definitely categorize some of the other people that maybe could retire, but don't feel free.
mhm.
And so that was a key piece missing still for people. So yeah, none of them were. And then he kind of sealed the nail in the coffin a little bit when he said, "Okay, Chris, how about this? How many of you guys, as financial advisors, are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, not all the renewals and everything you get paid that give you residual income, but actually doing these mutual fund investments?" And as I thought about guys that have been working there since the late 1970s and still could not retire, I said, well, none. I guess none of them are. And you have to understand, like, if you ever want to create real financial freedom, you want to model more of what you want to become like. And he kind of really just slapped me in the face with that one because as I'm looking, I'm like, well, is anybody in that company financially free? Even the people I looked up to that maybe had good incomes, but they still weren't at the place where they could retire. And then I realized, okay, you got me. And he didn't believe me that I was actually open at that point because I was like very obstinate for a minute. But then I said, he's like, well, okay, Chris, if you're really serious, if you really do want to know about this, because I said, well, please give me an answer here. Tell me something. Give me something. And he said, well, if you're really serious, get this book called Who Took My Money by Robert Kiyosaki, which is a lesser known Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. To save you the 3 hours of audiobook, mutual funds. So that's the basic message. They don't work. And that includes 401ks and IRAs, right? And then he said, okay, and now listen to this radio show. Of course, just like you're doing right now, you're listening to this. This was an AM talk radio show, more pre-podcast. And he's like, listen to these guys that are real estate investors and voila, like tell me what you think. So I did. And I listened to those guys for several months, probably about 2 to 3 months. And after a while, I got to this point of choice. I could either keep doing what I was doing, just, because my practice was at an all-time high, right? Because I built it up over the years. Either I can keep going, knowing that my heart's going to be at war, that I'm teaching something that doesn't work, or I can leave and go teach ballroom dancing on the side and also do mortgages, be a mortgage broker. So I chose the latter. As I said, my integrity is worth more than just trying to make money. And so I did. I went and became a mortgage broker, helped at the college, the local university, teaching some ballroom dancing. But it drove me nuts. I didn't know what these guys knew because there was people younger than me. And I was 28 at that time. And there's people that were like in their mid 20s, like 25, 26 years old, financially free. And I'm like, how did they do that? I thought I have to save forever. And if I saved every little penny I could, maybe by the time I was 40, I could retire on maybe $60,000 a year, right? My goal was to save $2 million was my goal. And now I started realizing you don't have to do that. And as I started to learn what they did, and start to really understand cash flow and passive income, I was actually able to retire later that year when I was almost 29. And I
Wow.
was like, whoa, that was way easier than I thought.
Mhm.
And it opened my eyes to just this whole new world that I never knew was there. I like just everything I was teaching from as a financial advisor standpoint just wasn't working. And that's where in 2007, I said, well, what am I going to do with my life? Because I've got a lot of it ahead of me still, hopefully. And so I came out of retirement to essentially teach people how to do what I did,
Yeah.
and now we may or may not go into the details. I actually went broke during the recession, went over $1 million in debt, didn't file for bankruptcy, but I had to pay that money back and get myself back out of the rat race a second time, which I was able to do by the end of 2016.
Mhm.
But I had to go through that recession, got my butt kicked really hard because, I got lazy. I didn't follow the rules that actually got me to be financially free in the first place.
Interesting.
So,
I would love to hear that story. Can you share that with us?
yeah. So what happened? Like I said, in 2007, I came out of retirement and I was like, I'm going to teach people how to become financially independent, right? Just like I did, how to get out of the rat race. And I even partnered with a bunch of other guys that did the same thing. We were kind of all trying to practice, we're practicing what we were preaching, right?
Right. And actually, I want to interrupt with just a couple of things
Mm-hmm.
before we go on this. There's a couple of things I want to highlight, and I want my ladies to really hear. The first thing is you said something so important. We look up to people, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
people that you want to take advice on where you want to be, take advice from people that are already there. Right.
Yes.
And so the very first question that might come up in our mind is, well, I'm looking for a financial planner. How am I going to find a financial planner that's financial free? They won't be working. Right. Well, then it comes to the next point. A lot of us work just because we love working. We love helping
Mm-hmm.
people, right? Retirement doesn't mean, again, I just want to emphasize, retirement does not mean that you're sitting on the beach going home the rest of your life. That's a really boring life. I mean, it can be very blissful for a period of time. I've done it, right? But everybody, especially successful people, need to have their minds and their hearts constantly working. It helps us to grow. It helps us to stay alive. And as you become successful, you will need that too. Now, it doesn't need to mean that you're making money, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
does mean that you have to be fully engaged. You have to have something that fully engages your heart, mind, and soul. And your time, right? Because you get bored, right? So I love when we talk about retirement, the way that you're sort of like, well, I came out of retirement. If you're at 30, you've got 60 more years of your life to go. What are you going to do for 60 years if you're not building something that fills you up, right? It's the same for me, right? I could
Mm-hmm.
retire, but I can't. I'm too there's too much going on in my mind. I can't. There's too much that I want for people, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
love when you talk about retirement, coming out of retirement, and also who should we be looking up to? Like, you want to make sure that you're taking advice from people who are where you want to be. They're not on that same journey. They're not still struggling, right? So I just wanted to highlight those points. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I mean, those are great points. I mean, it's because sometimes people will ask me, well, Chris, are you retired? And retirement is kind of a funny thing because I've tried it. Again, I
Mhm,
did it twice where I became financially independent. I didn't have to work anymore, right?
mhm.
But every time I tried to just not do anything, it was maddening. In fact, it was actually depressing.
You get
Um,
really
I
depressed.
You do. I
Yeah.
compare it to like fire, right? Like you got
Mhm,
to keep like a fire going within you.
mhm,
And it doesn't mean you have to burn out, right? You can
mhm,
overwork, you can overdo it and burn out.
mhm,
And that's not a fun place to be either. But I also realized that if I only, in my case, like if I only, even if I'm doing what I love, like doing this, right? Love teaching, like my
mhm,
podcast, I was still doing that even after I became financially independent in 2016. I was still doing it through 17, 18 and beyond. That was one thing I was doing and still, working with a few people, consulting them, but I was doing it very low scale, very low
mhm,
key, where I was only working 5 or 10 hours a week.
mhm,
But I realized if I only worked the 5 hours a week, that flame, instead of burning out, it started smoldering, right?
mhm,
It was starting to fizzle out.
mhm,
And so for me, the magic number was like around 10 to 20 hours a week, working more than that now. Now we've got like documentaries coming out and about our company and my story. And we've got, all this kind of stuff happening because the podcast just kept growing. I had to get to a place of choice
mhm,
where it was either I start turning people away and telling them no, or do I really believe in the mission of money ripples, which the whole aspect of money ripples is the ripple effect you create as you become financially free, right?
mhm,
Is that it
mhm,
doesn't stop there. You can create a ripple effect before financial freedom, and you can create even a bigger ripple effect after you're financially independent.
mhm,
And that's the thing I had to say is, well, money ripples. The whole mission of it is that ripple effect I'm trying to create across people's individual lives, their families, and generations beyond them, their
mhm.
communities, and across the world. And if I just let it die out, saying, "Oh, I don't have to do more work," no, go away. That's just one less. That's one less person's life that can be blessed, right?
Mhm.
That's one. I mean, if I know how to, we already know like exactly how to get people out of the rat race, and we've done it with not just myself, but many, many other clients. Why hold that back? Why keep that information back from people? So it's for me, that's become a mission. Like you become more mission driven versus, being more money driven in
Need
life.
driven. Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly.
I love that. Okay,
So,
good. So thank you for that. And I love your idea of money ripples. I feel the very same way that the wealthier
mhm,
you are, the bigger impact you can make. And who you
yes.
are as a wealthy person is going to determine what impact you make. So that's why I
Yeah.
focus so much on bliss, right? If we if we continue to work on being blissful, which raises our heart and our vibe, as we become wealthier and wealthier, that ripple effect is going to be a good ripple effect. It's going to be blissful. It's going to help the world, right? So,
That's right.
right from the bottom up, you want to make sure that as you're building, you know that once I'm wealthy, there's going to be ripples out in the world based on what I'm doing. What do I want those
That's right.
ripples to be? So, I
And
love that.
that's where I say money is a magnifier of the soul. It only
It
makes us
is.
more who we already are. It doesn't make you
Right.
somebody different. It just magnifies what's already within you.
Yeah.
Kind of like what happened to me in the last recession, right? As I became financially independent, now remember, I was a guy that I grew up in kind of an impoverished mentality household.
Mhm.
I didn't really understand abundance. I started to learn about it, and that's what helped me become financially independent, right?
Mhm.
But I was just starting to learn it. I hadn't fully internalized it. So as I started to get more and more money, what I was really doing was trying to cover up my insecurities. What I was is I didn't want people to look at me because I felt insecure about myself. I wanted people to look at my stuff, look at my outer world, right? I'm not saying this is the case with everybody, but it's like when people are starting to flash, walking onto their jet planes, which is not even their own jet plane. They just happen to like see a jet plane or have somebody that they know can do it, and they pay to get their pictures taken next to a jet plane or next to a Ferrari or Lamborghini, right? They try to
Mhm.
portray something amazing that's going on in their life, and you should follow it too. Um, I'm probably going to end up doing a TikTok video pretty soon about my car because I've got two Nissans. Even though I make more than enough money to buy the Lamborghinis, the Mercedes McLarens, or anything else. I don't. I'm just not a car guy. I don't give a so
It's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's okay to spend money, but do it on things that I mean, it's great to spend money, but do it on things that are important to you, that actually
yeah,
provide value to your soul. They're not just status symbols, right? So
that's
I love
right.
that. That's another thing about being wealthy that I love is that you can choose
Hmm.
that, right? You can
Hmm.
just choose to be, well, I don't care what anybody else. We're actually doing a building project right now. And it's so
Hmm.
funny because my business partner is all about the name brands for like the faucets and the
Hmm.
all everything. And I'm like, I don't care. It's like, whatever. They're buying a $3 million home. Buy something that is beautiful. I don't care about the name
Hmm.
brands. He's like, well, people buy, blah, 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 blah. They need the brands. I'm like, whatever. I can't relate to that because it's not my life. It's not
Hmm.
who I am. It's not what I want, right? So certainly it's
That's
okay
right.
that people are like that. But I love that you say that. And this is why I love chatting with you, Chris, is I feel like we're so aligned on this, on sort
Hmm.
of what feeds our soul. That's the
Yeah.
most important thing. And wealth helps to feed our soul and then create the ripples, right? So
Yeah.
anyways, keep
You,
going.
you have to be there first. Yeah.
You
It's
have to be
that
there
be do
first.
have.
Yeah.
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 And,
Yeah.
and that's, but I wasn't always that way because
Mm-hmm.
again, like I said, I had insecurities. So I went and I bought a Mercedes, and I bought a
Mm-hmm.
nice Mercedes that had really nice rims and everything. And I would show it off to people. I remember I picked up a financial advisor at my old office one time. I picked him up in the Mercedes only to drive him across the parking lot to where where the restaurant was. I mean, just to show him like, look how much better my life is now that I'm not one of you guys.
Right. 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 Right.
So
Interesting.
trashy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and even the house. I remember telling the realtor, I was like, I want to walk in this house where someone says like, "Whoa!" Like I want that wow factor.
Mm-hmm.
So I want the nice like the cool little chandelier with like the nice little dome lighting around it and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And so I was trying to wow people, and and that's fine. Like I could have just kept paying for it the way I was, but the problem was that again, I was taking the focus off of what got me to be financially independent in the first place, which was passive income and cash flow. And
Mm-hmm.
I started getting lazy. I started thinking, well, hey, I'm awesome. Look at how well I'm doing. You know what? Maybe I'll take a little bit more risk. Maybe I'm going to start buying properties just so we can flip them, right?
Mm.
Which right before the last recession was not a wise idea. So I think that's like, well, I could buy $100,000 property, and if it appreciates 10%, because I was banking on appreciation, if it appreciates 10%, I make $10,000. But if I buy a $500,000 property, then it at 10% appreciates $50,000. So maybe I should buy bigger properties. And so I'd rationalize these things, hoping that there would be appreciation, right? Didn't care about the cash
Hoping.
flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't care that it actually was profitable if I had a renter in it, because you know what, it doesn't matter because eventually the appreciation will make up for that loss that I have.
Mm-hmm.
So the demos didn't make sense. So of course, when everything started hitting the fan, plus I'd launched a new business, and that business we were focused on teaching real estate investors that were
Mm-hmm.
doing the same thing, banking on appreciation. So pretty soon they're all broke. So our clientele are pretty much non-existent at this point, or becoming non-existent. Um, and my own personal finances are a mess because I ran up my expenses, and I also wasn't focused on the cash flow for the properties I had. So which also ran up expenses, but not necessarily the income to go with it. So the next thing I know, when I finally decided to look at my money, I was in the hole 15,000, 16,000 a month,
Wow.
short every month. So I was making 5,000 or 6,000 a month because we were struggling in our business. But after everything was said and done and paid for, I was short because the expenses were like 21, 22,000 a month.
Chris,
And
where are you located?
I'm in Utah.
Okay, great. Just wanted an idea on the market.
Yeah, if that were California, you'd be like, oh, that's nothing.
Well, actually, I didn't have that experience, but
Mhm.
but it's okay. And I did all appreciation plays also,
Yeah,
but we were able to cover everything. We showed no losses during that time.
that's great. And that's the
So
thing, like the numbers have to make sense, right? Like they
right.
really have to make it work. And
Mhm.
and that's the thing, like it worked for a time, but eventually that luck runs out. I
Right.
remember, here's another mistake I made. Because I listened to Dave Ramsey before.
Yeah.
Bless his heart, wonderful man, does great good for people. If you think of it like if you're going to college, they have the math 101, but then they also have the math 99R for remedial, right? Like you got to take this math even to get to 101. That's
Uh-huh.
what Dave Ramsey teaches, right? He
That's
really
totally,
does
I agree
teach
with that.
that entry level, like just here's how to
Here's
essentially,
some financial something so that you've got
yeah,
some education on this.
yeah.
Yeah.
And his first two baby steps, really like, trying to track your money,
Mhm.
having a little emergency fund, great
Mhm.
stuff. Going beyond that though, you're pretty much going to go broke following his advice.
Mhm.
I actually love his poster children, right? The graduates, the ones that did go debt free, but then they say, I'm not free. I have no passive income coming in. I have to
Nothing.
keep working,
Yeah.
even though I'm debt free and I saved in all these mutual funds, but yet I can't retire. I'm like,
Mhm.
guess what? We can get you retired next year.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
those are my
Exactly.
favorite people because they did what he gave. But the problem is, if you ever want to create wealth, it doesn't work. Well,
Mhm.
I followed some of his advice too, because again, I came from that traditional financial advisor background. And so the one mistake I made is I was putting all my money and equity into my house, my
Mm.
own personal residence, because I thought, worst case, you can always get a line of credit because you can pretty much cash out anything. Remember, I was a mortgage broker. I
Mhm.
was kind of birthed in a sense, metaphorically speaking, of course. I was kind of born in the market where you could even do stated income loans. As long as you had a good credit score, you could pretty much get anything you wanted,
Mhm.
which is not the case anymore. Since
Definitely not.
post-recession, they've changed all those rules, which is why I tell people there's not really a market crash coming for real estate that way, because it was because of things like that why the banks were failing and everything was just a big hot mess, right?
Mhm.
But I was making the mistake of throwing money into equity, thinking, oh, I'll just get it back out later. Well, of course, middle of 2007, when I was realizing I was negative cash flow, I said, ooh, I better go to the bank. Well, they said, guess what? We stopped lending money to you guys. So all this equity was trapped. And then, of course, as we saw prices depreciate, I lost all that equity,
Mhm.
to the point where I ended up foreclosing on that house in 2009,
Oh.
actually not even 2 weeks, a week after my fourth child was born. We ended up having to really pack up and move out of our house and move into a new rental, that was like a quarter of the cost of the house that we had. And it was demoralizing, right? Because it was the house of my dreams. I lost it. And again, remember, I put those stuff in front of me to show my value, right? I didn't want people to see my internal. I would use that as the front to show value. But in truth, now that stuff was all taken away. I'd already turned in my Mercedes. I turned it in before they repossessed it because I said, listen, I can't make the $1,169 payment. Take it. They auctioned it off. I owed $30,000 negative from the auction. Luckily, with the house, I was able to get out from under that, even though they end up selling it for about $300,000 less than what I owed on it. I got out from that, but it was rough. And then I still had several $100,000 I had to make up. I borrowed money from friends and family, thinking, hey, this is just gonna be a short moment. We're gonna pull through this thing. I'll work my way out of it. No, I didn't. So, I mean, I was in a rough spot. I
That
was really
sounds
in
really rough.
a hole.
Yeah.
It was so bad, actually, to the point. I mean, I remember, if you ever seen the movie Cinderella Man with Russell Crowe and
I
Renee
have
Zellweger,
not. No.
such a good movie, based on a true story of a boxer during the Great Depression. I had very similar experiences. I mean, there was times where I was going in on getting welfare, getting food stamps, getting, from like storehouses and stuff, getting food because I couldn't afford to buy groceries for my family. A guy dressed up in a suit telling people, hey, you can get out of the rat race too. And look, I was back in the rat race trying to deal with all this stuff. And, and so I was just struggling. My wife at that time, she was threatening to take the kids, move in with her sister till I figured my stuff out, right? It just all this kind of stuff was going on. And not to mention the collector calls were coming in daily, multiple times a day. In fact, my friends stopped calling, but those collectors sure didn't. They kept calling better than my friends did at that time. And it was a real, that's when you lose everything, that's when you really find out you have everything. Because when I lost it all, it was just me left. And I had to really, be okay with that. As like, am I okay with who I am? Am I okay with this value? And as I really started to strip that away and strip away the ego and the pride and everything, and started to surrender to the experience. Again, I didn't surrender in the sense that I should have gone bankrupt. That would have been so much easier. Bankruptcy would have been easy, just hit that reset button and work from zero. But I had to work from -1 million, right? And I had to work my way back out. And really the best time when you get that place of surrender and just knowing, I know if I just keep doing the same values and applying the same principles in my life, that got me to be successful in the first place, specifically cash flow, right? If I really start to rebuild and focus on that, how do I get my expenses under control? How do I start creating more value for people, which generates more income? Because the real secret of making more money is creating more value for people, even if it's for your boss, right? It's always about how you go about creating value for them. As I started to do that more and more and more, that's really where things started to turn around. Like it took time. And really, like I said, it was really about 6 months after we were foreclosed on. My son was born, my fourth child. And then finally things started to really turn around a little bit, that I was able to dig my way back out more. Still had ups and downs because, right as things started going good, the partnership I had, we broke up and I launched Money Ripples with a 2-year non-compete and had to go in a brand new market. The market I focused on were women entrepreneurs in Utah specifically, because I knew that was the market he hated because he was kind of a chauvinist. So he was not great. He did not like women becoming clients. So I said, I'll play in the space, the sandbox that you don't want to be in. Great. I'll focus on women and entrepreneurs and stuff. And that's where I went and rebuilt Money Ripples from scratch, or really built it up from scratch, not rebuilt. And then had to get through that. And even went through a divorce in 2015. And that really got me laser focused to focus on really that cash flow and passive income, especially because I was already starting to really have dug myself mostly out of the debt I was in. Then I was just focusing on how do I get that passive income up? So then I get to the point where I can work because I want to, not because I have to. And again, just really, being very intentional about it, really focusing on the numbers, watching the numbers. I was able to do it by the end of 2016, right after I remarried. So it was awesome. It was a hard path, hard road. But I learned so much from that because, it wasn't just I got lucky. It wasn't like that, right? I had to redo it during the middle of a recession, almost deep depression that we were in. And just to do it a second time, really showed me that this stuff works, right? Like if you follow the right principles and then the strategies back it up, it's going to work, every single time it will work if you just apply the right principles.
I love that. Talk to me a little bit about the idea of bankruptcy. So what you just said was it would have been so much easier, but I decided to pull ourselves out. Why did you make that decision, even though the other option was easier?
It was more of a spiritual decision, actually. I was praying about it a lot. I was like, should I do this or not? And something just told me, don't do it. In hindsight, now I can see it was the best choice because, being in the financial space like I'm in, and even where you hold certain licenses, it is kind of nice to know that you don't have to keep answering that dumb question of, have you filed bankruptcy before in your lifetime? And have to explain that every time. It's nice not to have to do that. But it was hard because, all those collections, those judgments, those liens, those are they were eating away at me. I had to really recontextualize it. By the way, right before I got out of out of that hole, or things started to turn around, I kind of turned around my attitude too. I started like calling those collector calls, I love you calls. Because, when they would call, I thought, hey, my friends don't call anymore. These are the only guys calling me. So when they call up, I would answer them like it's my friends calling. I'd be like, hey, how's it going? Good. I'm here to call to collect the debt. Yeah, great. You going to pay that debt? No, not today. don't have any money, but I would if I did.
Yeah.
And like, well, when are you going to pay it? No clue, but I promise you I will. And okay, we're going to call back again, right? Maybe even tomorrow, maybe next week. Yep, I hope so. Look forward to seeing you. Love you. Yeah. And it actually really made it fun to answer those collector calls, because before I would just ignore them. And every time the phone rang, even when I was in meetings, it would just
You'd have
bring me the
stress.
energy down.
Yeah.
That stress, it would just weigh on you so
Mhm.
much. And just be able to let that go and just say, you know what? I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. I just know I will.
Mhm.
And that was the thing that really I felt that there are no accidents. It's that law of synchronicity, right?
Mhm.
That everything happens for a reason. And I thought, well, maybe even if just one person's lives was blessed from the pain I went through, if that my pain became somebody else's gain, would that be worth it for one person? And I
Mhm.
thought about it. I was like, no, I think it would be. All right. Well, how about 2 people? Yeah. 10 people. Yeah. And now I haven't realized that now. I mean, literally thousands, if not hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people have heard my story and my experience, and even use some of the financial strategies that we teach to be able to help out of that situation. And so I know a lot of people have been more blessed than that, but it's one of those things that, like, I just felt like, no, like I just really felt that bankruptcy for me, and this is again a personal choice. I'm not judging either way. Again, look who you're talking to right here. I mean, if you think I can judge you, well, hello. If anybody can judge, I mean, I was over $1 million in debt. I can guarantee your situation has never been as bad as mine. Rarely do I ever find that person that does have that bad of situation, right? And usually they're like multimillionaires or billionaires now if they did,
Mhm.
but which I guess I did. So I mean, that
Yeah.
makes sense. I'm not a billionaire. I am multimillionaire, but not a billionaire. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that it was one of those things that you can't judge for, and sometimes bankruptcy is the best decision. Like for my credit, it would have been way easier to rebuild my credit if I had hit the bankruptcy button,
Mm.
because resetting things and then just starting over and building new credit again would have been easier than having all these judgments and liens and collections on my credit for years and
Mm.
carrying over. And then they just show as like old history, right? And then you finally get it all paid off years later versus hitting the reset button, they're all gone, and then you start over. So
Mhm.
sometimes it makes sense. But for me, I just knew, I'm like, listen, I'm in a position I can do this. And yeah, I negotiated with some collectors. I paid less than what I owed. But they were happy. They were like, at least pay us something. I said, all right, will you take this much money? Yes, we'll take it. That's worth it to us.
Mhm.
Great deal, And so like the Mercedes, I owed $30,000 after it got auctioned off and fees and everything. Well, we settled for about $7,000, and was able
Mhm.
to negotiate out of that. And it was tough, had to have my dad loan me money to do that, and then I had to pay my dad back. Right. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, we got through it. That's the thing, is that it took some time. It took a lot of effort and focus and commitment. But looking back, I feel no regrets. I mean, I do feel regrets that I borrowed money from friends and family, right? I feel bad about that because some of them had to wait years before they got paid back. But, I don't regret the experience I received.
Mhm. We're not going to be able to go through your questions today, but I feel so much like just your story really helps people to realize how how real life is for us as
Mhm,
investors. Like it's not a cakewalk, and it's
mhm,
not, there are moments where it feels like a cakewalk and it's wonderful, and I love my life too. So I'm not, but I think that most of us have been through some really, really, really rough times. And so much of the time, my listeners are hearing people that are very successful. I only bring people onto the show that are really successful because I want my listeners to hear about success from people who are successful. Um, but we don't often hear about is the story behind the success. And I
mhm,
think that's important, so that not only to make us understand that that it happens to all of us, and if you're in a low place, that what's possible for you, but also because I think when you talk about how you pull out of those low places, those those things that you focused on, the things that you talked about, the things that you did that you just shared with us, can be kind of a model or a beacon for what other people can do. So I think it's a
mhm.
real learning moment when you get to hear a story from a successful person about what happened to them. And so ladies, don't disregard that, right? You want to make sure that you listen to this with an ear for what were the lessons that Chris learned, And what are the lessons that I can take away from that so that you can learn from his mistakes rather than experiencing them yourself, right? And I think that's the power of story and the stories of successful people. That's one of those things that I love listening to. They're interesting, but they also have so much information that I can learn from and model after, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um, so Chris, I'm going to have you on the show again because you've got so much to share. I know my ladies are like, how did you create that passive income? I want to know more. And I also know that you talk about infinite banking, and I love
Mhm.
that topic. I'd love to talk about that also. So I'll bring you back on the show a few more times.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for sharing your story and being so vulnerable with us. That was really, really powerful. Thank you.
Absolutely. If there's anything you learn from my story, that there's always hope. You know,
Yeah.
if I can battle back from a negative $1,000,000, I can and become financially independent and free. Obviously, you have more hope than I do or
Yeah.
had at that time. So that's the good news.
Well, and I love that you made decisions based on your own values, your core values, because in the end, no matter what we do, we've got to live with ourselves. We've got to sleep with ourselves at night. We've got to wake up in the morning with ourselves. We've got to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and know that we're right by us. And it's a
Mhm.
really, really hard thing to live that way when you're feeling desperate, when everything has hit the fan, right?
Mhm.
I know myself how tough that can be. And I love that you model that, you know what, it was a spiritual decision, and that's why I made that. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody but your soul needs to feel good about what you're doing in
Mhm.
your world. Right. So I loved that. I would like to talk about an extra knowing your numbers, because I think that that's a big piece of pulling yourself out of a hole. But also, when you move to creating financial freedom, you need to know where that is, or what
Yeah.
those numbers are like. So I do want to talk about that in extra. So we'll do that. But before we go, can you tell everybody? I know that you've got a free gift for them. So could you tell a little bit about your free gift?
Absolutely. So, uh, all the pain and the effort that we had, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, all that, like I said, can become your gain. We started coaching clients how to find and free up cash. So I stopped
Mm-hmm.
teaching people how to get out of the rat race and started teaching them how to find money, how to actually get the money so that you could get to the next phase of starting to create more passive income.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually have an ebook on there called Beyond Rice and Beans: 7 Secrets to Free Up Cash Today. So
Uh-huh.
yes, you don't have to be like Dave Ramsey and live on rice and beans.
Mm-hmm.
You can live free and still have more. And so we actually have a free download for you guys. It's very short read. That's the good news, but it really talks about the 7 main ways that not just myself, but hundreds of my clients were able to free up on average $34,000 a year. And so
Wow.
you can
I
find that
love
just on our
that.
link there,
It's,
moneyripples.com/women, right?
yep, that's exactly right. Moneyripples.com/women.
Yeah.
So that's for you ladies. Definitely go check it out and use that link, please. When I give you a specific link, there's a couple of things that can happen. Usually what it is it's a marketing tool so that we understand how many of you ladies were actually interested in this topic. It helps me to decide whether to bring people back on the show or not, what topics you guys want to hear more about. It really helps to direct the show. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is sometimes it's an affiliate link and it actually supports the show so that it helps to pay for me to continue to produce this, because it's an expensive thing to run a high quality podcast. That's what I want to do for you. But I need some support too around that. So sometimes it's an affiliate link and I do get paid on that. So there's two benefits. So please, when you hear a link on the show, please do use that specific link, even if you can go to other places to get the same information. So in this case, it is moneyripples.com/women. So thank you for that. So before we sign off on this show, Chris, let's do our 3 rapid fire questions. Are you
Let's
ready?
do it. I'm
Okay,
ready.
good. So tell us one super tip on getting started investing in real estate.
One of the best ways, besides just getting education, but really start to find ways to find your money, right? I call it getting money out of prison. So there's usually 3 big places people keep money trapped.
Mhm.
And that's because financial advice tells you to do it. One is, I mentioned this before, your home, right? I made a mistake of keeping money trapped in my house. Find ways to see if we can get that out. A lot of times you can get up to 80% of your equity out as like a home equity line of credit. So look at ways to get access to that money, such as a home equity line of credit. 2 is savings. A lot of people have been building savings, but letting it sit there and they're losing to inflation. But that's one place that's a good funding source beyond your emergency fund that you want to have there to use to fund that. And then the third place are often old retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, things like that. Definitely, I'm not a big fan of 401ks because it locks your money in prison and you don't have any control of your money, your life, or your destiny if you keep it locked up there. So be able to get that money away from that place, that allows you then to be able to make more money with it.
Got it. And then what is one strategy on being successful as a real estate investor?
One of the best strategies is really not, I call it boring is sexy. That's the one thing I learned because remember, I was trying to
boring.
I'm the most boring guy, you know.
Hello. Sorry.
But no, it's true. But no, I mean, like I learned that trying to chase like the hot things, like, oh, what's that newest crypto, or or what's the latest stock you might go for, that that GameStop or whatever, right? Like all the stuff that's hot, hyped up topics in the news. Those are things you should keep your money away from, right? You want to go where people aren't going, and so really focus on what are people not talking about? Where are people not going? Where's the steady, predictable place I can put my money that allows me to have that steady stream of income, right? To really know what I'm going to make, not gambling it, hoping that you're going to make a huge home run where most of the time you'll end up striking out.
Right. Hope is not a strategy.
No, we don't like to live on hopium.
No, we don't. I love that. Okay. And then give us one daily practice that you do, Chris, that contributes to your personal success.
This is actually a daily practice I was doing when I was going through those worst, roughest times. And it pulled me through. It pulled me through my divorce when I was going through that. And that was rough as well. I do a morning ritual, like a lot of successful people have done. And you heard talk about this subject, right? Like Tony Robbins has this hour of power. There's like the miracle morning and all that stuff. I have my own morning routine. I just focus on really 3 areas. I call them the 3 E's, which is exercise, education, and enlightenment. And so exercise, I try to get my body moving and focus and pumping, really just to wake myself up because, I'm in my mid 40s. I need something to wake me up in the morning. So I exercise first. Then I can do things like more enlightenment type stuff. So I can do like prayers of gratitude. Like if I'm out for a little jog, just counting my blessings and doing prayers of gratitude. It could be doing a gratitude journal. It could be yoga, that could be a little of both. It could be reading scriptures, or the Bible or whatever it is that you like to do. Just those things that kind of tune you into your highest self or God. And then in education, really like learning your trade, it could be learning different skills. It could be emotional, intelligence that you're trying to create, and whatever it might be, whatever it is you need, you can do that through audiobooks or reading books. You can do that through, so many different ways, podcasts like this right here, all these ways you can really have access to really increase your knowledge. And what it does, it just gets you the best win for the day. You start the day, that no matter how bad things are, you have a win. You have something going for you, and you start with the right frame of mind, and everything seems to just work better throughout the day.
I love that. Yeah. In Choose Bliss, that's the first chapter, is about
Definitely.
our morning routine. Because I think the thing that we all need to realize is we all have a morning routine. It's just most of us don't have an intentional morning routine. Most of us have a morning routine that supports our frazzled, crazy, getting started late morning, right? We all have a routine. But once you make it an intentional routine, you can have it support your bliss and your business and your life significantly better. So I love that. And choosing your priorities for that morning routine. I can't choose your priorities. Chris can't. Hal Elrod can't. Tony Robbins can't. We can choose the priorities. For me, a big part of my morning routine is the walk with the dog and my husband and sitting and having coffee and making eye contact with him before we start the day. Right? That's a big piece. Connection is a big piece of who I am. It's a big piece of my bliss, and it's a big piece of my morning routine. So you get to choose what's important to you. And certainly you can structure it after successful people. We've found that there are strategies for success. You probably want to include those in your morning routine, right? But you need to include what's really important to you too. So, take steps towards success and support yourself also. So thank you for that. Awesome. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to extra and talking about money, like knowing our numbers, knowing what's really necessary to create passive income, what our real expenses are. I was telling Chris in the green room before we started recording that For me, I haven't had a budget in a very long time. I'm very, very lucky, and very, very grateful that we've built a life where I don't have to worry about a budget. But now, as I think about real financial freedom, like really being able to retire, really being able to live my life of passion, I'm looking at more passive income. So I need to know what those numbers are, and so I'm really interested in going back to the basics. And so Chris and I are going to do that in Extra. So if you are subscribed to Extra, stay tuned. We've got more. And if you're not, please go to realestateinvestingforwomenextra.com. For those of you that are leaving Chris and I now, thank you so much for joining us for this portion of the show. I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, remember, goals without action are just dreams. So get out there, take action, and create the life your heart deeply desires. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to find out more about how to become a blissful millionaire, go to blissfulinvestor.com. See you next time.